Afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I know it's the last session of the day, so I'll try and keep the energy up, but I think it's going to be a nice session. I'm going to share what we've learned. I think there's a lot of stuff happening around the world at the moment. One of the big things you don't think about, this big war that's taking place now, and everyone's looking at the price of oil, but we've got countries like the Philippines now, 130 million people, and they can't get fuel, so they can't go to class. So the rollout of our tech is happening, across the world, which is nice for us. But obviously, I think online assessments is here to stay. And when we have these crises, I suppose it's a way that we stop the postponement of exams. So I think from my side, very nice to be with you. I was actually supposed to be in the US this week, but luckily got to send the rest of the team. So I got to be here to talk because I thought it was important. And a lot of you look familiar. I know a lot of you, we're very thankful, are using us. You look very different, in person. I had a couple of people already say, well, you look taller, or you look shorter, or you fatter, or you skinnier. It's weird seeing someone for the first time in person when you're only used to seeing them online. So it's really nice to see you all and be with you all today. I'm going to share, I suppose, a little bit of history of Invigilator, and then very importantly, some of the new stuff we're working on and have launched and deployed, not just here, but around the world, because I think, we've been to quite a few of these discussions. And the nice thing is that it's not, a South African problem and we're the only ones trying to find out how to teach and how to learn. It's everywhere, right? No one's got the answer. It's about how do we apply it at our school or our university for our students, is the important part. So I think, there's no exact science. Even the tech that we've built, some of you that have been with us since the beginning, it's been a few years now, the tech really has evolved. We certainly haven't been perfect. It's technology, it's students, it's teachers, it's marks, it's disciplinary, it's parents. It's complicated. I always joke when people say to us, how long do you think it's going to be before a big university just types into AI and says, create me an Invigilator application, and then boom, they're using their own created software. And I said, when we go overseas now and you have a look at what Google's working on, what Meta's working on, they work on what we call the sexy side of tech, where you wake up in the morning and you signed up for licenses and you're off to the races and they just charging revenue. Us, it's dealing with teachers, dealing with students, academic input. This is not working. Fix this. Bring this in. So we very much the unsexy side, but the side that we like. And it's important to us to get this right, because at the end of the day, I think we've all got these big plans, practical application of the theory. How do we teach now with AI and incorporate it? But assessment is still important. It's still important to be tested on your work. And if we're doing that online, it's extremely important to make sure that it's done in a credible way. And I think that's what we, at the Invigilator have obviously strived to do. Just a bit of background. I think you've seen me speak about what we can do now and, convince you Invigilator is the right solution. But I think, we weren't always what we were today. I'm one of the founders of Invigilator, and we started the company in 2020. And I'll give you a bit of background maybe first in terms of how I ended up here and starting Invigilator. I actually did CA first before getting into tech. And one of my article years, I got the opportunity to go and lecture at the University of Johannesburg as opposed to doing audit. So anyone that's gone the audit route, I'm sure if someone told you could skip 1 year of auditing, it sounded quite good. So that's what I did. So I went and I lectured for a bit, I taught and I marked and I set papers for a year at the University of Johannesburg instead of working at the audit firm. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I went and I finished my articles at one of the big investment banks, but I was fortunate enough to stay back and still guest lecture for UJ and IIE, Monash, and then also set some of the psycho board exams. So I was very much tied up in the academic circles. 2020 came around, COVID hit. I was setting a paper for one of the board courses, and the conversation was, well, what's going to happen? Are we just packing up? We're going to have to kick this can down the road. We don't have any tech in South Africa that can work. And what I got to see, I was sort of on the front lines of all this tech that was being piloted. And it was all the proctoring solutions that I'm sure you guys have come across and tested and trialed and see if it's going to work. And I think the bottom line was it just wasn't going to work in our context at the time. I mean, it was pre-AI technology, it was old school stacks, but it needed students to obviously write with really fancy devices, it cost a fortune. It just never got off the ground. So we released a very basic solution to start off with. our mobile solution. We moved a handful of institutions online. I was actually still at RMB. I headed up one of their investment teams, and I used to do all the interviews on the radio and TV about the markets and what was going to happen and the budgets and the economy. I would have been really busy now because I think everyone is talking about what's happening in the markets at the moment. But, you know, for me, when we got the opportunity and we created something, fortunately, my brother's a really good software engineer. So we were able, during COVID, when we weren't allowed out, to code something and create something that was very basic and launch it and release it. And I think we had 3 or 4 universities at the time that gave us a chance, that said, okay, well, we want to carry on writing our exams, so let's give it a go. And it was a very basic application, but it was better than writing your name on a piece of paper and saying, I promise I'm not going to cheat. We could have at least figured out who was writing, did you talk, mapped your GPS, those types of things. Basically what was available at the time on a mobile phone solution. So we did it, and we launched it, and we got a bit of an in into the market. And as we did that, I resigned. I was out. This was my future. This is what I wanted to do, because I could see what was going to take place in terms of how valuable this was. I mean, UNISA, for example, was very much a come into venue, write your exam. They used the Invigilator app, I think, for 4,000 students in 2020. But we wanted to make sure that we gave ourselves the absolute best chance of creating tech that would allow that institution to move fully online one day if they wanted to do so. And I think it's great to see that UNISA is obviously fully online. A couple of the other big universities are completely fully online. And then most of them are blended now, using us in some way or the other to offer online teaching, online learning, online assessment in a flexible way to students. What we did post then, I mean, obviously we wouldn't be here today if we just had the mobile solution. I mean, great that we solved the problem at the time, but we had to evolve our tech. And I think that we continue to get frustration from institutions in, you know, we've got PCs, we want to use the PC solution. You guys need to create one, but we just can't use full proctoring because it's just too intensive and it's obviously just too expensive. So we started building the Invigilator PC, and for those schools that gave us a go, we went from app-based technology to web-based technology now. So you've probably been through the ringer with us since the release of AI. But in 23, we really started evolving our tech in terms of the PC solutions that some of you might be familiar with now. AI detection plagiarism was important for us to bring it in. Why? Because we wanted to be the education tool that had everything. You know, we didn't want you to have to go to X and Y and Z to have all your tools. And I know there's been a lot of heat on AI detection at the moment and plagiarism, and is it a thing of the past? And I'm going to give you my perspective in terms of how it's been used, not just here, but around the world at some of the American online school groups and the UK online school groups and what they're doing with this type of tech. And maybe it will be useful and maybe it won't, but it will be interesting nonetheless. Live AI monitoring. So let me pause here. I think if we look back at pre-AI, I mean, you've probably all heard some big talks today on how AI is affecting education, how we need to teach, how we need to assess what students are doing right, what they're doing wrong, what's AI going to mean for us down the road. But I think for us, what it meant is when AI came about, we in the past had to record sort of random snippets, I suppose, of the exam, and then take all of that data and process it in a server and then return it back to what we call the dashboard. So other proctoring solutions would obviously monitor you for the entire time, but in the exact same manner, where they record the entire thing. Either it would bring a human being in, or you'd have to upload this massive file, process it, return the results. Very expensive. Students need a huge amount of data to run that, and you need a pretty new computer in order to run that tech. So we wanted to get to a point using AI that we could give continuous monitoring, just like the US and the UK solutions, but do it in a way that really worked well here in South Africa and Africa. And I think this has been quite a cool aspect for us in that we no longer need to process data server side. Any of you that are using us at the moment know we've got a local AI agent that students need to download before they use us. And this does a lot of heavy lifting on the student's device. So we're watching that student the entire time now. We've trained our models to understand what good behavior looks like, bad behavior looks like, and it keeps it really light in terms of what your file upload is at the end, 10 megs, 15 megs of data, even though we are watching you for the whole assessment. So that's been quite a cool change for us in terms of AI, how we've brought that in. We're obviously on version 3 of this live AI model. We're about to launch version 4. And all it means is that we're using data that we are creating ourselves to see what does this look like? What does eye line consistency look like? What does it look like if a student is using a cell phone, if they pick something up they're not supposed to, so that we can give a really lightweight solution to anyone that wants to try and study online or blended, but do it in a way where everyone can use it. And I think here in SA, if we had to say, use the Invigilator app, but only 60% of a UNISA, of a Northwest can use the tech because we're expecting the latest MacBook Pro and you have to be running a fixed fiber line, it's not really going to get off the ground. And that's not really what we're passionate about either. We want everyone to use the tech. And I think that's been our big focus point. So I said it's not easy, there's always issues and things, but it's because we're trying to be as inclusive as possible. We want to work with any device. We want to work with any student, regardless of the location. It's almost like your put through, right? If you kick people out, if they're getting 50 and 60%, then obviously your pass mark at the end of the year is going to look really good. So from our side, if we just kicked a whole bunch of devices out to say not compatible, it would look brilliant. No one would have an issue. It would work perfectly. But we try and let everyone who's got some sort of device with a camera or microphone write online, because online opens up education. It makes it accessible. It makes it affordable. And that's what we are passionate about and doing. Lastly, I think this is something that this room probably hasn't heard of yet because it's brand new. But I've been trying to reinvent this whole lockdown technology because of AI and allowing students to use one language model, but be able to control that, not make it a free for all. How do we bring in clever lockdown technology? We use screen monitoring technology at the moment. So we understand what your students are looking at on the PC, and then we process that and we return it if they've used things they're not supposed to. Whereas I wanted to get to a point where if you wanted to lock a computer down, device down, you could do that, but you could also whitelist applications, websites, documents, data, whatever it is that you need to do that assessment with. But to do it in a way that wasn't this massive program install where you needed these administrative rights and it was going to be a nightmare for parents, that it could just run simply off the browser. And I think, again, with AI, we've been able to get there with that type of a solution. And it's really cool for the online schools, and I'll show you why shortly. I've been through this. I think we understand what some of the downfalls were with some of the existing technology solutions. And I think, again, someone coming from the US, someone coming from the UK, someone even coming from India doesn't understand our market. Tell someone from the US about load shedding a couple of years ago, they look at you and what does that even mean, So I think for us here, it was clear that there was no one focusing on emerging market technology, and that's really where the Invigilator fits it in. And if we look at it now, we've even got institutions in first world countries now, big online school groups that have deployed this, because those other tech solutions are just very heavy to run. And they are pre-AI tech stacks. They're oil tankers. If someone has spoken to us, say, Nick, this is a good idea, we'd like to incorporate this, we are open, we're willing, we want to work with you. And I think that's what makes us a good solution, is that there's only value in collaboration, especially here in South Africa. And a lot of the new features that we've got on Invigilator have been pain points that academics have brought to our attention to say, this is not working properly, but this could be a new feature, let's bring that in. Or this could be a cool feature because we're seeing X and Y. Bring that in. And the lockdown technology was exactly that. As we see more and more computers being used in a venue, you need to have technology that can disconnect, make sure that they're not using the device for things they're not supposed to. So again, it became pain points. And then how do we make that tech unique to our circumstance, not just replicate tech that's already out there? We don't want to create responders. We don't want to create Proctoria. We want to create the Invigilator solutions that can run offline, that can be lightweight, that don't require large amounts of data, that any student can make use of, and obviously gives value to the academic institutions. Cool. Important question. The age of AI, nightmare for us, right? Monitoring, making sure everyone's doing their own work. So how can AI assist in maintaining academic integrity? Well, I've covered it a little bit. I think we've got the opportunity here where we can get away from this constant video stream and having to process things server-side. We can train models, we can have local AI agents that are doing what they need to do to understand what your students are supposed to be doing and what they're not supposed to be doing, so that we can lighten the evidence in terms of your workflow. We understand that. I think the better we get at Invigilator, if you look back to the mobile solution, we had some photos, we had an ID document, we had some photos of you, we had some photos of your script, and we had a GPS. Looks really cool. You work through that. This is what my students. Now, as you go on, you've got videos, automatic photos, live AI monitoring, GPS mapping. You've got scripts coming in, AI. It can look like a nightmare. So How do we make sure that the data coming back to teachers post the assessment doesn't create a massive nightmare for you to work through? And I think that's important in using AI, and we're getting better and better at doing that. I've got this dream. It's almost like a robo-taxi, like where Tesla's trying to go, in saying that, we do have the ability to obviously set automated photos to run, to set automated videos, meaning regardless of your behavior, we're going to record you. And that's going to fall back, and then it's going to give you the results on the dashboard. But we've also got this ability now to monitor you live. And if you misbehave, we record those images. So what I want to get to in the future is that if a student behaves, you see no data. If the student doesn't, you get the data. At the moment, we've got a half-half. So it's almost like you've got automatic pilot there, but you've got someone sitting there just in case something goes wrong, because you've got the backup evidence. But that live AI monitoring is getting really, really good, where you can rely on it, because if the student picks up their phone, or if the student looks away and talks to someone else, we're able to grab that immediately through the local agent and present that evidence to you. You don't need to go and look at all of the videos and the automated photos, but we will get there together. I think that's the cool bit and where AI is going with Invigilator. Why are we passionate about getting this right? So it's not about catching students cheating. I think, for those of you that followed us in 2020 when we first came about, there was lots of stuff. The owl must fall, the watchdog of South Africa, the owl is watching you. We had all these marches. I had political people getting caught for cheating. And the next thing we had, marches that, what are we doing? We're making universities hold their marks back. It wasn't easy. And we're not there to be the bad guys. We're not there to be the police. We're not there to try and, do a student training and guys, be ready. We're going to catch you. It's about allowing students to study where they want to, what they want to, and for tertiary level, right at a time that's convenient. When I went back and did my CA, I still had to work a full-time job, get back at 6 p.m., then go and do all my work, attend my lectures the next day, go back to work. It was a nightmare. If I could study and write online, it would have made the world of difference for me. And what we're starting to see now, and it's so interesting looking at the demographics, is that across Africa, you used to have all of these people having to come to South African universities, get temporary accommodation so that they could write their exam once or twice a year. Now we're seeing that fall completely down, and you've got students all over Africa writing at our South African universities. Why? Because you don't need to move here in order to write at the universities. You can do it through the Invigilator solution. Once more, if you look at what those costs were, you used to have to rent venues, print papers, question papers, the logistics. A paper would get leaked in the logistics, another paper. Then you'd have to collect all the papers, then send them to the markers back. An absolute fortune. So this meant that we could only test students once, or maximum twice a year. With the Invigilator and the way our licensing works, everyone's familiar with it. You pay a once-off annual fee. You use the tech as much as you want. So the big universities are getting to a point now where they're testing and assessing weekly. So you're getting more practical application of your theory, not just a once-a-year test, you pass or fail. But this is what online education can do. We've also got students in China studying at South African institutions, Australia studying at South African institutions. We've now got universities like Boston offering American university degrees. So you've got Americans studying here because they don't have to move here. You can write your exams. We are passionate about getting that right. Online education is here to stay. Online assessment is still important. If we look at AI at the moment, it hasn't replaced everything. We always have these big debates. Everyone says to me, Nick, where's education going? If you need to look at where education is going, you need to look at where work is going. Software engineers like your guys are probably going to be redundant in a year, 2 years' time. At the moment, AI can only do so much. We are hiring more and more people in Invigilator, not because of anything else other than their skill set and expertise are still very much needed. It's one thing to generate a base set of code. It's a completely different thing to make that solution scalable. Structure your servers in the right way. Your security. What about your compliance? GDPR, PAPIA. Make sure no one can access that data. So yes, there are certain things that AI can do and can automate and can make tasks that were mundane now automated. Absolutely. But you need to understand your theory so well in order to be that expert that can see where AI has potentially gone wrong. That's the difference. So it's almost like that board 2 exam that we used to write to CAs. You'd go to the exam, they'd give you your whole crate. You've got every book you've ever studied with. It's an open book exam. You don't open one of those books during the exam, right? So you've got all the information there. But you need to take that theory and practically apply it to the scenario. You're not getting asked to regurgitate 10 points. They're saying, here's the 10 points, practically apply. And that's where the working world is going. You don't need to do mundane tasks. AI can do that, but you need to be brilliant and understand the work that you have supposedly need to be an expert in order to direct AI to make your job better. And I think that's where software engineering, just in terms of what we're doing, is brilliant. But it makes mistakes. It doesn't structure things right, and you need to be able to have that expertise in order to use AI properly. And I think that's where we're going, and we are passionate about creating tech that can obviously work side by side and doing this right. Integrity and security of online assessments, very important to have identity verification, audio recording, screen monitoring, video recordings. Anyone that's using Invigilator, these are the tools that we've obviously adopted, and you can run at your school at the moment. Some new tech that's come out is this new lockdown solution that I was talking about. And what this new lockdown solution does is it's just a browser. So if your student is accessing your learner management system on Firefox, we point them back to the Invigilator browser. It's just like Chrome. You've got to install it just like Chrome or Edge. Install it before you write your exams. It directs you back. And you as the teacher can control what your students have got access to. Now, this is really cool for an exam point of view, because obviously it takes away some of that data that we're speaking about. You know, how do we lighten that dashboard? Screen caps can move away. They opened up ChatGPT. Now, all of a sudden, we're preventing them from accessing these things, but we're doing it in an inclusive way that's not requiring internet connection. It is just running in combination with the Invigilator. But where else is this effective? So some of the big online school groups, not just here, but overseas as well, say parents are very strict in taking away cell phones during class time, but you're giving them the device that they can use to speak to each other, play games, do all kinds of nonsense while they are in class and supposing to be listening. So what we've done with that lockdown browser is integrated it with lessons as well, where a teacher can say, you know what, when you join my lesson, the computer's going to deactivate and you can't copy and paste, but I'm maybe going to give you access to ChatGPT. ChatGPT now, you can't copy and paste, you have to prompt it, and the teacher can see how well your student is prompting that one large language model and practically applying it to the quiz or the assessment or the task or the homework, whatever it is. So there's multiple use cases for this tech. The other thing that we've done with the lockdown browser now is a lot of schools and universities, not just here again, are taking laptops into a venue to actually write their exam. So here, you can obviously go and make sure that the computer in that venue is only being used to access exam material. Where there was a big frustration, massive installation programs, we wanted to move to a browser. And the second big thing was whitelisting, because in the age of AI, it's no longer practical to say, let's install a program that disables everything. You need to be able to customize what you want the students to access and not access. So if you need them to write a software course and you need them to access Codex, for example, you can write there in the setup, Codex needs to be, copy the link in, the app is there, the website is there, the students can use it, but they can't use anything else. If you want to control the use of AI, that's the problem at the moment. I think everyone's saying, how do students use AI in a task, in homework? Well, it's difficult when it's a free-for-all, because you've got any language model available, you've got any paraphrasing tool, you have, feed it through all of these fancy tools, re-engineer it, comes back. The student looks like this 90% student that we were talking about. Exam comes, all of a sudden you get 20%. So you're limiting what the student can access during class time, during homework, during quizzes, during anything. You can just flick the solution on. So they have to do their own work. Now, all of a sudden you take another device. So they have to focus on the class. They have to focus during homework. So where we're trying to move with Invigilator is the education tool, not this proctoring system that gets used once or twice a year. We want the Invigilator to be used daily. And again, this is what we incentivize. GPS is there. It's effective not just for online, but also in venue. I'll get into that. And then plagiarism, AI detection, writing style analysis that we've brought into the technology. Again, where did some of the other tools fall short? Well, I think there's been a huge spotlight on AI detection and falsely flagging, and it's right and it's wrong. Where it's really nice is being able to detect early if a student is over-relying on AI so they don't get 20% in their exam. If for their first 2 homework assignments, we can pick up, there's a high likelihood here AI is being generated because we're answering answer on answer, not just paper as a whole. We can give the teacher insights into they need to intervene early here. This is someone that is over-relying on AI. Again, a really nice tool. In combination with the proctoring, obviously, if you've got webcam monitoring, activity mapping, audio mapping, and then post a submission, you've got a defender and a goalkeeper. Because if they've shared anything with someone, we're going to pick it up in plagiarism. If they've copied and pasted anything from an AI or paraphrasing tool, we are going to flag and we're going to say there's a high likelihood that this doesn't match what your student has done previously. And then lastly, we also do writing style mapping now, which is really cool. So the more your students submit on our platform and the more it's their own work, we build up a baseline. And then when they deviate and we say this is AI, it actually shows you where their jargon is out, where their vocabulary is out, where they are out compared to other students and so on. The other thing that I really like about this for schools is that it gives you all of the stats that you need. And stats are interesting because if you want to go and have a very quick look at who are your highest AI offenders at the school, it will immediately pull them up. Which of your subjects and papers were the one where AI was used the most? Maybe the assessment technique is wrong and we can address it. There's all this interesting data that I think schools can make use of now, which is really, really cool outside of just assessment. Lockdown browser, just having a look here in terms of the exam setting. So you'll see here, it's integrated. The student's very comfortable. They're obviously lying in bed, writing their test. But now it's going to check your camera's working, microphone's working, face detection, and then all of your AI code of conduct, your exam integrity, exam rules can pop up immediately. This is all a student needs to do now in running that lockdown technology. The minute they start assessment, the computer is completely locked out. So with these new integrations we've done with the learner management systems, it becomes that much more slick, that much more effective, where everything else is blocked out. Only the material you want them to access is then accessible by that student. In venue, and again, this is more applicable to those schools that have got a blended learning approach. What we've seen with universities and schools with blended learning approach is that the mobile solution is also really effective for in-venue, not just for exams, but also mundane tasks like roll call. We've got a big problem at the moment at the university level where because of online, no one comes to class anymore if it's a physical class. So what happens, you pass out these pieces of paper, your friend's sleeping at home, you just sign for him, and then some poor lecturer's got to reconcile that at the end of the term and give you a class mark. I know because I had to do it. So what happens now is a QR code's popped up on the front board. As the students come in, they scan with Invigilator mobile app, takes a photo of them, maps a GPS. It is you in class. If your friend at home sleeping gets the code, it's going to fail him because he is not in class. Daily, weekly, monthly, annual, roll call attendance, boom, done. In venue, Psycho, for example, have just signed us up now. So their board exams that they write across the country, it's a very much an in-venue, old school, you sit down, you write. But the problem they had was ghostwriters. And the problem that these big guys had as well is that there was a risk that they lost a script or two. Thirdly, you give the script back to the student and then miraculously they hand it back for a remark. And all of a sudden, there are paragraphs that have appeared here that you've supposedly missed now in marking. And they say, ma'am, sir, you've missed this. And now you've got to go and give them the marks because you don't have the proof. So what we've done with Invigilator for in-venue exams, at the end of the exam, the student can take out their phone, scan the QR code on the paper, maps their face. We get 100% accuracy that it is the right person. It's not a ghostwriter. For exams like Psycho, we can even map it back to their first year, second year, third year, CTS, so we know who this is that's actually writing this exam. We get the GPS, we confirm it is you, you were sitting at that seat in the venue, and then you scan your script in. No longer do we need to hand the scripts in, collect them out to markers, moderators, back, somehow to immediately into the learner management system for marking. So you can take what would have been a physical marked paper and you can make it online, straight into the online marking tool, mark. So there are some nice features for those blended institutions as well that you can use the Invigilator throughout. It's not just your big online exams. Integration, and I know we started having some meetings, had some good meetings today with some of the schools around integration. So we've started with the big learner management systems. So your Moodles, your Canvases, Brightspaces, Blackboards, etc., because those are the ones that are obviously our biggest demand, not just here globally. But move to a point where we can make it a single click of a button to start the Invigilator. Everyone, I think, that's been using us in this room, we've been very fortunate, like I say, have been with us where it's been independent. Some of us even been the PC app, and I still have nightmares about that solution and some of the support that we had to do for that platform. But we've got to a point now with a web-based solution where it's really good. But if it's run independently, there's still user errors that can take place. You need to enter a code, find the code, the teacher needs to send the code. So how do we get to a point where a student cannot start a test or a quiz unless Invigilator is successfully running? And I think that's where we spent a huge amount of work at the moment in getting that right. So making sure you click a button, it starts the Invigilator. If we don't have Invigilator running, you don't have access to the quiz unless it's there. To make it as simple as possible, do away with anything manual. And then lastly, for schools as well, I think, again, this is something that wasn't focused on internationally, but we found it important. You can't have students typing out every submission they make, because they're going to get to their final exam and they need to handwrite it, and now they are used to typing. So what we can do at Invigilator, and what we've done, is that there's an integration between our mobile application and the PC. So the PC can do the monitoring, PC can do the activity tracking, but when it comes time to submit your script, the mobile app prompts a student to scan their script in, all the data ties up, and we're still able to run handwritten tech through AI detection, plagiarism, writing style analysis, so it doesn't have to be typed. So these are some really nice features that the schools are making use of. That's really, really cool. The other thing that I like about it is that obviously at the moment you can incorporate this at the end of the exam, i.e. the student uses the phone to scan the script at the end. But you can also bring this at the beginning of the assessment so that they do a room scan and it locks the device down. So now you've got 2 devices locked down. So now the student to communicate with friends needs a 3rd device. It's starting to become harder and harder to do. Where we're going to go with this tech is it's going to be a room scan. And for those schools brave enough to do the student support with us, placement to the left or the right of the student so that we get a different view of the computer as well. So we will get there. That is something that we're working on at the moment. What does this integration look like now? So this is just Moodle. You'll see that the student now attempts the quiz, start the quiz. It actually initiates from within the learner management system. So it's no longer a separate web tab. It's no longer an application. It's in the learner management system itself. When that is active, you can obviously access the quiz boxes or the PDF question paper or anything else you're supposed to look at from an exam point of view. But if not, obviously, you're not going to have access to it. I just threw in a quick selfie here because those I'm sure are familiar with taking a selfie on the Invigilator. But with this type of monitoring, you don't need a selfie. Obviously, it can run automatically in the background. So this is maybe a little bit different in the way the integrations are working than what you're currently adopting as a standalone solution. And we must get there together. I know some are using customized LMSs. It's not the mainstream ones. But we are confident and adamant that we must get this right, because all the schools must write in a way like that, where it's a click of a button and Invigilator automatically initializes. Future trends and innovation, supporting responsible AI adoption, we've chatted about that. I think that our AI tool is very, very useful, not just exams, you pass, you fail. We're not saying that. We're saying use the technology for every single submission so that we can understand the baseline of the student. How do they write? How do they interpret the material? So that if there is suspicion later on that AI is being used, you've got all the data to map it back to. You can also intervene early. Exam design is crucial. We've just done interviews and hiring, I think, 12 more academics this week at the Invigilator. So as much as we're a tech company, we're very much an academic company, and exam design is crucial. So talk to the team. All of you know Erica, all of you know Nicola, and the rest of the team is now a lot wider and a lot bigger. If there's help on exam design, what are the right parameters? How should we bring the features in? That's what our team is there to do. We're not just a tech company that's saying, thanks so much for your business. Here's your license. All the best. We'll see you at renewal. We're saying, reach out to us. You've got an academic support team, but a student support team. Reach out so that we can help you get maximum benefit out of Invigilator. Classroom focus enforcement. Lockdown browser can be used for classroom activities as well. We think it's really cool. And then lastly, the writing style analysis, also really nice. Locking down everything on a computer. This is what the tech is going to look like. As the student starts the exam, sorry, I just want to go back so that you can see it from the beginning. As a student starts the exam, they're going to have to force close everything on that PC, and it's only going to allow what you have permitted your student to access. So you'll see here, it force closes everything before they're allowed to access their learner management system. Obviously, if they've got auto single sign-on or anything like that, it will immediately sign them in to Moodle or Canvas or Blackboard or whatever learner management system's been made use of. But you'll see now that we, for example, allowed TensorFlow to be accessed there. So you can make anything accessible, but it's just showing you that for software exams, engineering exam, maths exams, where they do need different tools, you can whitelist it yourself. You don't need to contact us. You can do it. You can set it up in the way that you want it. Writing style analysis. So this is the new UI that's come in. So I'm sure you guys have used plagiarism. AI detection is relatively new from about a year and a half ago. It's really, really good now. We look at every single question that's been submitted. We give you a full analysis of what we think it is, whether it's human. If it's human generated, it forms part of your student's baseline. If we flag it for AI, it's not to say pass and fail. It's to say, here's all the evidence in combination with what you know about the student. Is it someone that's gone from 40 to 90 and you know something's off here? Then have a look at what the data is saying. Have a look at how many questions have been flagged for AI. Have a look at the way their writing profile has changed. Have a look at jargon they've used for that submission compared to other students in the grade. All of this data is now available and accessible on the Invigilator. Implementation strategies, I think, again, I've mentioned it, but there is teacher support, there is student support, there is training resources. Please bring our teams in. We love to help. We will train the students, train the staff, show you all of these new features and technologies and tools, and hopefully get to a point where everyone's running with the smoothest integration available. I think here, implementation strategies in terms of costing, there's still no change in our costing. So all of these features are just being built for the South African market to use at no extra cost. And I think the other important thing is that they're there for you to use regularly now. I think all schools can use the Invigilator on a daily basis. And that's the way the product has been built. We've created everything from the ground up ourselves. We're not piggybacking off third-party models because we want to offer the South African market, especially a fixed price that incentivizes the use of our tech. Because the world is moving so fast, tech needs to move with it, but we can't keep charging our clients every time we come up with a new feature. And most of these new features come from you guys. So please keep complaining. Tell us what's working, what's not working, because I promise you it matters to us. And if there's something, if there's a loophole, if something could be better, we bring it in because the overall population then obviously gets a better experience then as well. Lastly, data privacy protection compliance. I thought South Africa was bad. We rolled out in the UK. My goodness, you must see what GDPR is like with this. But I think it's extremely important to know that all of this data that's been inputted into the Invigilator is going to no one else other than you as the school. You as the school can only use this data for academic and invigilation purposes. So you can't go and take one of our selfies and post it and say, well done to, A. Smith who achieved 90% for maths, because it wouldn't be in compliance with our contracts. We're very strict. It has to be data that belongs to you, used for invigilation, so that we can comply with all of these things. And then lastly, just in wrapping up, case studies. Everyone in South Africa is using our product slightly differently. And I think that's the beauty of Invigilator. I think a lot of the proctoring solutions, it was, you got an off-the-shelf solution, it did X and Y, that's what it did, all the best, use it. We've tried to create all of these different features, all of these different tools so that you can set it up and customize it to suit your specific school perfectly. And more importantly, to get continuous use out of the Invigilator so that we're not seen as the proctoring app or the owl is watching you or the security of South Africa. We're seen as the Invigilator, the education tool that all school, universities and schools need to make use of. And I'm going to stop there because I know I've just hit my time. And I know that it's the last session of the day, but thank you so much. It was really great to see you all here.
We really appreciate it. And we do have about 5 minutes or so. If there's anyone with a question, if you're willing.
Of course, yeah.
Otherwise, I'm sure you'll be here at the end as well. If you want to chat with them, let's see if there's two there.
We can reach the pictures.
They built, so reach out, yeah. So you can pop me, Nic at invigilate.app or Erica or Nick or any of the team. Yeah. I know. Give us your best one. So sometimes, yeah. Look, what we try and do, and I mean, it's unfair because they've got that skill, that is we bring a whole bunch of developers in, so it's our boardroom, and we say, here's an exam for an hour, cheat. And then they blatantly cheat, and what do we miss and what do we catch? But we also have students that report directly to us. You actually get good students out there as well that say, my friend did X and Y, and you guys didn't pick it up. So I think, again, it's important, and I mean, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying any information on it is useful. But I think the most important thing with it is, we are tech experts in terms of who's at the company, and we've got academics that have got really good understanding of how academia works. But we don't have the same amount of students that you have using our products every day. So if there are shortcomings, loopholes, things that you believe could be better, This is typically how we work with all of our institutions and we collaborate. So, I mean, the lockdown browser was purely because one of the institutions that we work with had massive frustrations because they couldn't whitelist the programs and applications they wanted, and no one would help them do it internationally. We said, we can do that. Come, we can build this and we can get this working together. We involve that institution in a QA process, testing, feedback. Then they let it go on a group of students to say, beat it, try and get out of it, press the Windows key, Control Alt Delete, try and replicate or create VPNs until you get to a point where I can't do that now. And then you know the product is ready for the market. So we do the best we can to bring people in to try and beat it. But I think ultimately we also got to understand that we're probably going to be 97, 98% of the way there. There's always going to be someone that's clever, that's figured something out. But we can't let the entire population not study online just because of those one or two. We need to try and work out how we can obviously keep improving, but in an inclusive way. Yeah. Thanks, Belinda. Yeah.
Not comply, they don't switch on their camera. As soon as that happens, it becomes a university or a school problem. You don't need further with that. So our experience is suddenly we've got a lot extra. Normally in an invigilator room, you get 3 or 4 students in 1,000 partners. Now suddenly a lot of students not complying or cheating, and we have all this. It's a lot of extra. So I want to get an idea, 7 months. Because you work with huge numbers. How many non-compliance, how many cheating do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Look, if I had to go off the top of my head, I'd love to give you actual stats, right? But I'm going off the top of my head in a combination. You probably look at a first-time rollout, you're going to get 20 to 30% of the population is going to flag something. And then once the data has been worked through, you're probably going to be left with 15 to 20% on the first-time use. That's taking in the assumption that there was something in place or that they were in venue. The data sometimes gets skewed by institutions that have used nothing for the last 3 years, and then they give Invigilator, then they say you have to use Invigilator, and all of a sudden it's 60, 70%. And the way that that's dealt with, we get it down to like 3 to 5% of the population, which still sounds like a lot, but it's a different type of assessment, right? The incentive to cheat is there because the notes is there. So you're probably going to have it a lot more. We just need to make sure that we detect it the first time the student does it. And then most importantly, that it's acted upon. I think the minute they do something and they get away with it, that's when it starts to spread and that number gets worse. But something else that's worth mentioning is that I know for some of the schools and the universities, going through that data can be a daunting fact, because exactly to your point, everyone sits here, you write, everyone leaves. There's no invigilation reports, it's just the marking. So now it's a different way of assessing, in that we have to detect what the student has done during the exam. Someone's got to look at it. So something that the Invigilator team also does is academic reviews. The Prof, we also look at that data and we can give a final report as well. That's why we've got our academic team. So we can work with you, we can share those stats with you. It depends if it's university, school, but the most important aspect is that typically the first online assessments are really bad. Then you get caught, then it gets acted upon, and then all of a sudden you see that variance, decrease substantially, and then it sort of maintains at around a 5% level. Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Mika.